everybody. Welcome back to the Huntsman Polanco podcast. Tonight we bring you episode 272. Tonight we feature the second and unfortunately last studio LP by the great band Joy Division, Closer. I originally thought about doing this only once before. We kind of done a back-to-back episode. It was the band Soul Side. And it wasn't quite, I think something even came up then. It wasn't, quite back to back, but it was pretty close together. I kind of wanted to do two in a row as host for Joy Division for a variety of reasons. Number one, as I already said, they only ever released two actual studio LPs. Another reason was that in September, when I get to go see Peter Hook and the Light do what should be a really interesting homage to Joy Division and New Order. Originally, that show was going to start out with these two albums, Unknown Pleasures and Closer, being played in their entirety, followed by many other great things. I think that has since changed. I at least reading about the date of the show, it's saying that they're going to play the Substance albums and some different stuff. We'll see how that pans out. But that was a little part of the impetus as well, that, sort of getting excited for that show, even though it's still a few months away. And also I didn't know that due to, life concerns and things that happen, that it was April 14th that I hosted Unknown Pleasures, which was over 2 months ago. I thought it was going to be a little more bang than that. I knew we were going to have a couple other episodes in between, but I thought it would be still in a little more of a Joy Division state of mind. But perhaps tonight will bring us back to that a little bit. So I just went ahead with the original plan, even though things kind of got turned around on a few different levels. And we're going to talk about Closer, which, by the way, I recall that coming up, us mentioning that a few times on the Unknown Pleasures episode as well, like referencing this album. So it just felt right to roll on into studio LP number 2. So that's a little background on how we arrived at tonight's album selection. But before I go on too much further, gentlemen, what is happening? Good to be back on the air with you. Lay some good news on me.
Yeah. Good to be back. Yeah, lots of good news from the. I would never refer to us as content creators, but some good stuff happening in kind of our hobby world. If you call this podcast one of our hobbies, I guess it is. This podcast is now on YouTube. At least it should be by the time you hear this. Yes, you could finally see our beautiful faces on YouTube. It started with last week's episode when we talked about REM's Murmur. This would be the second episode up on YouTube. I will try to go backwards and add past episodes. So very excited about finally a long overdue YouTube channel. So happy to do that. Me and my bandmates in Mid City 3 have a new record coming out. No, that's not right. That's next month. Sorry. My solo project, Huntsman, has a record coming out on Friday that I'm very excited about called Camelot Rots. That is probably the most gothic thing that I've ever done. So maybe appropriate to talk about Joy Division tonight. I'm excited about that. And Rodney, when you talk about the gap between Joy Division records, how many series have we created from our Music Cities series to our Vinyl Cage Matches to, I was going to do this 90s aggressive kind of noise rock series that I've done one album for. We do this all the time. So I feel like you having, like 6 episodes between Unknown Pleasures and Closer is pretty succinct. So good on you, brother. Good on you. And we have a lot of Cure records that I promised we'd get to. So you're well ahead of the curve on your planning, my friend. Well ahead of the curve.
Gotcha. Well, thank you. Glenn, fill us in on what you've been up to.
No, I love the creativity, and I'll actually add to that with my idea for next week. But as Mike said, we are now on YouTube, and you guys were just wearing, Rodney, you were wearing glasses. Mike, you have glasses. I feel like I need to have some glasses on. So maybe
you look a lot smarter. You look a lot smarter.
Yeah, no, kind of a Hanson Brothers look.
Right.
Yeah, it makes you look smarter with the glasses. I probably need to do that. I definitely need to do that. The one thing I did want to touch base that I didn't get to talk about because I joined late last week was that No Values show. I don't know if you've read much about it. I just kind of wanted to give a quick rundown. Mike, I know you terribly hate um, festivals. It was something that definitely I think a lot of people did hate. The parking was atrocious. But I just want to really quickly, I wrote down kind of the people I saw and the highlights, if you don't mind, if you can give me 2 seconds or 2 minutes. But we were on our way there. There was a lot of people that I knew that were actually there, including some folks from out of town. But the parking was horrendous. We had to park literally 2 miles away in a neighborhood just to get in. It was, if we didn't, we would have missed probably half the show. It was that bad. I'm not sure why they didn't. The people who throw Coachella on don't have that figured out. Although my last memory of going to Coachella was we were in the Escalade and across the street from maybe a Costco or something, and did that. But anyway, I digress. But anyway, let me quickly. So we did make it in. The first set I did see was the Addicts, which was great. Right into Scowl, another hardcore band after that called MS Pain from Louisiana, which was kind of like a hardcore / electronic band. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of them. I saw half of the Black Flag set, sat around getting food and listened to Dillinger Escape Plan. Most of that set, actually, that was, wow, really freaking loud and technical. And then Jello came out and sang California Uber Alice with them, which was pretty cool. Quickly after that, went over to see Agent Orange, and then Jello must have just jumped in a golf cart and went over there because then he sang Police Truck with them. Saw ST, saw Sublime, never seen Sublime with what's his name's son. Bad Religion of about 5 songs, and the set of the night, which was a lot different than how you described Echo and the Bunnymen, Rod, how you can actually get up and move around. This was the exact opposite. It was the first time I actually got a chance to see Turnstile, which was pretty freaking awesome. They were really freaking good. Right into Power Trip, which was their return post Riley Gale's death. 3 songs of SD and the Misfits. But yeah, it was again a lot of music for one day, but enjoyable, not enjoyable. I'm glad I went. It was an event. Not sure that's going to happen again, but we'll see. Anyway, we move on. But yeah, other than that, doing well. Yeah, I'm here actually in a hotel room in Turlock, about 30 minutes away from our friend Marcel. And I was just saying off air, this place is BFE. So it's hot and yeah, in the middle of nowhere.
All right. You there for work?
Yes. Yeah, here for work.
All right.
Going to Modesto and heading home tomorrow.
All right. Central Valley of California. There you go.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I just drove through there a couple months ago. It's a little desolate. Yeah, back to your glasses comment. I wasn't thinking smarter. I was thinking like perhaps dumber, a la Hanson Brothers from
Slapshot.
from the great movie Slapshot. Yeah.
Nice.
But that's great to hear about No Values, Glenn. I talked to you, texted with you a little bit about that, but didn't get a lot of details from you. That's all sounds pretty cool, as well as annoying and troublesome all at the same time. Gosh, we didn't even really talk about punk rock bowling, and that seems so long ago now. We're not going to go into a whole a thing about that, but the reason I bring that up is that it's kind of a long running, I don't know if you call it a joke or whatever here on our program. It's how you guys get to go to shows constantly, and I never ever go to shows. I'm proud to say that this spring that has turned around a little bit. Memorial Day was one of the highlights of my year every year, punk rock bowling. Got to see Glenn and a bunch of other good friends there. Mike and I talked last week about going to see Echo and the Bunnymen. Unfortunately, it wasn't together. It was about a week apart, but that was immediately following PRB. And then this last weekend, we got to go to a show that probably couldn't have been any different than Glenn's experience at No Values. We went to see a band that I've been wanting to see for a long time, but it was at a farm, essentially, an orchard, at a cidery, a pretty cool company, that sort of an independent company that makes cider here in Western Colorado. Wound up camping for 2 nights in the orchard amongst the apple trees that they make the cider from, but in a quaint little stage where there's kids on rope swings and people of all walks of life, but everybody just chill. Wayne the Train Hancock, an artist that I've been listening to for a while and wanted to see for quite a few years now. Wayne's been around for 30, 40, maybe more years. Mixing kind of rockabilly West Texas swing and a little Hank Williams Sr. and throw all that in there. An outstanding upright bass. He plays amazing rhythm guitar, doesn't even think about using a pick, just keeps that rhythm with just his bare hand, his palm and fingers, and no need for a drummer when you got that much rhythm going. So kind of an interesting approach to music. It was fantastic. Went with a bunch of people that I had been friends with for a very long time, and it was a very special get together. So yeah, I've had a good spring of getting out and actually seeing some live music. So there you go.
That's awesome.
Awesome. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's get going with coming weeks. We can talk about more shows, I am sure. Hopefully we keep and I'm sure we will keep our good streak. I know you guys will keep your streak of seeing good bands going. But tonight we will talk about the aforementioned Closer from Joy Division, released in July of 1980, approximately 2 months after the tragic death of frontman Ian Curtis. So a posthumous release, if you will. As I said, would be the not the last thing released by the band by any means. Plenty of compilations and live things have come out over the years, a lot of which are really great. But as far as going into the studio, making a record with producer Martin Hannett, who produced their first record, Unknown Pleasures, this would be it. This would be their farewell to writing and recording in a studio, anyways. So as you guys already know, or even if you didn't tune into the Unknown Pleasures episode, we kind of gave our background about Joy Division, but tonight, I guess, just kind of segue into it. This band's career was all too brief, we all know that, and so obviously not a lot of time between these 2 albums. I'm sure we'll touch on some slight differences and shifts and things like that, but I feel like it's an album you can just sort of flow right into. So if you guys have anything to say, sort of pre-discussion about the album, please jump in now. Other than that, I'm usually the track one, side one guy, but sometimes when I am the host, I like to take a little break from that and let somebody else jump into it. So Mike, why don't you take the opening track, Atrocity Exhibition, and tell us what you think of how Closer kicks off.
It's a track one, side one. Let's see what Mike says.
I will, but let me take that alternate path first and talk a little bit more broadly about this record and my relationship with it. We talked a lot about obviously our relationship with this band on the Unknown Pleasures episode, just back on episode 264. But Closer, just because of how iconic, I think specifically the album cover for Unknown Pleasures is. That is the default record, and it's the debut. That's the record everybody thinks of. And for myself personally, that was the only record I knew for a long time was Unknown Pleasures. It was the only one I owned for a long time. And I felt, Rodney, I'm sure I've said this on the show before, but you said something that at the time I don't think you thought was profound, and I know your opinion around this has changed a lot in the intervening years, but at one point in our lives, when we were still very young, you said to me about Bob Marley's Legend. You said, I don't really feel the need to have the Marley discography because I have Legend and I don't listen to Marley all that often. And when I do, everything I have is here on this one record, and this kind of satiates my need to listen to Marley. Now, again, I think your opinion over the years has changed about that, but once upon a time, that was your perspective. I think that was my perspective on Joy Division for a long time was, I have Unknown Pleasures. If I want to listen to Joy Division, that's an easy go-to. And I had Substance. So, I had enough Joy Division. When I finally really kind of, instead of just kind of enjoying Joy Division, got really into Joy Division, I think Closer is the record that did it for me. And I think Closer is a better record than Unknown Pleasures. And I think that might be kind of borderline blasphemous just because of the iconic nature that Unknown Pleasures has taken on, and the t-shirts and the whatever. But Closer, man, this record it's probably more I don't know, claustrophobic. It's more foreboding. It feels listening to this record feels like the weight of the world is kind of crushing you. It is a very fucking dark record. Probably made darker because we know what happened to Ian Curtis and the whole thing. But man, this record is a fucking banger front to back. Like this record, again, I think it's probably my favorite Joy Division record. And I think it's the record to me, and maybe this is just my experience, but I feel like it's the record that separates the kind of like people that are into Joy Division from the people who are casually interested in Joy Division. At least, again, that was my experience. But it doesn't start that way. So to talk about track 1, side 1, Atrocity Exhibition is, I feel like it's one of the more, I mean, it's kind of hypnotic and it's really abrasive. And I don't think it's necessarily representative of the way the rest of the record sounds. It's not one of my favorite songs on the record. I like it, but I don't love it. And I don't know that I think it's a great album opener, but I don't have a better album opener. It's not as good as Disorder, the song that kicks off Unknown Pleasures. Certainly not as good as Warsaw, which is the song that kicks off the compilation Substance. So for me, again, having gotten to Closer third in my life with this band, Atrocity Exhibition never really jumped out at me. I mean, it's good, but it doesn't move me necessarily. I do think, and this is something that Ian Curtis really excelled at, has a fucking excellent title. Atrocity Exhibition is a great fucking name for a song. And I know he got it from I don't know if it was do you know what it was, Rod? It was I don't know if it was a play or he got it from something, but it's a great fucking title. So I know that was long-winded, but I wanted to talk a little bit about my history with the record because it impacts the way I feel about all of these songs, including kind of the opening track.
Yeah, thanks for doing that. I apologize for attempting to jump right into track 1 without kind of pressing you on that a little more because
Yep.
Yeah, because obviously you had something interesting to say about that. Glenn, as you kind of jump into the record here, anything you want to say before getting into specific tracks about the band or specifically this record, or any relationship you did or absolutely didn't have with it?
Yeah. Honestly, I don't know if I've ever heard this record, which is whatever. I'm glad I did, because I don't know if I talked about how I felt. I'm sure I talked about how I felt about Joy Division when we did the other record. But it at first was kind of hard to listen to, like hard to get into. Like they're a moody band. I think you have to be in a specific mood to listen to them. And if you're not in that mood, it takes you a little bit, I think. And the first couple songs, I think to Mike's point, this first song is unlike the rest of the record. It's kind of tribally sounding and kind of different. But as you listen, as I listened, I got more into it. And then as I listened to it the second time, and then as I listened the third time, I'm like, oh, okay. I kind of feel like I understood where, like, I liked certain songs more, because to me, they're for me specifically, they either I like when they're really upbeat or when they're really just mellow and just really, but anything in the middle, I don't really like as much, I noticed. So there's that. And then his voice, just generally speaking, I think, I'm trying to think of another singer, but I think he's one that you either like a lot or you don't like at all. Like his style and everything, it's just kind of, obviously if you heard his voice, it's very it's like it's a signature voice, you know who it is. But I think, I don't know who to compare it to, but I'm sure you guys can think of somebody. But yeah, a voice that either makes you probably go, oh, that's, and again, it kind of, I have to kind of grow into it, because, by and large, I like more upbeat music. But this, I noticed, like the middle of the record, I really enjoyed a lot. And then I kind of dipped, and then I liked the end because it's so mellow.
So I'm curious, Glenn, you said Ian Curtis's voice is one of those voices you either really like or you really don't. Are you saying you fall on the side of you really don't like his voice?
No, actually, so as I take it for what it is, I really do like it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because you have to kind of, to me, I don't, and this sounds weird maybe, but for me, I specifically have to warm up to listening to this band. And once I do, I'm like, oh, okay, I really like it. I don't know if that makes sense.
Do you like Bauhaus? I'm not sure we really. Okay, yeah, I wasn't sure I couldn't remember if you liked them or not.
Yeah, again, another band I think that you have to just really, and I'm not like in that mood often, because I'd like to think I'm a little more cheery, but but yeah, I mean their stuff is pretty depressing and downtrodden, and yeah, it's heavy. It's heavy. It's like heavy, right? So
I said to you last week on the REM episode that REM seems like a band that you really would like a lot, and Joy Division seems like a band to me that you really would not like. So I like the way you described it, of like the bathwater is too fucking hot, but once you get used to the bathwater, it actually feels good. You just have to put in the effort to ease into that bathwater,
Yeah.
Before you slit your wrist.
Interesting. So yeah, a little bit of an acquired taste. I totally get that. And for me, both studio albums fell into that category a little bit, and I know exactly why. Purely out of coincidence, right about the exact time that I finally got around to being exposed to Joy Division and checking out Joy Division. I didn't realize this till later in life, but that was almost the exact time, which would have been like summer of 1988, that Substance compilation was released. I didn't know anything about that, or just other than, hey, I want to check out Joy Division. Here's a cool sort of, I might have even thought it was like a greatest hits, not even realizing it was singles, or, like, all right, what a great introduction to the band, having no idea that I probably found that at the record store because it had just been recently released. And I would say by and large that record covers their brief career pretty well. It's got different tempos, different sort of styles of songs, but I think that you could argue that there's definitely some songs on there that are more on the hookier, catchier side, right? And certainly not as dark as some of the material on these two LPs. So these two studio albums, even though I've had them for almost as long as Substance, found copies of those for many decades ago. I think that's the reason why it took me a little bit longer to get into these two studio albums, as great as they are. For that same thing, like there weren't just the immediate catchy tunes on there, although there certainly are a few on both albums. But as a start to finish, it's actually kind of comforting to think about that, because as great as these albums are, it always kind of puzzled me, like, as much as you dig this band, like, you've had those two studio albums forever, and those aren't always the things that get played. Not only does Substance probably get played the most, but I have some like live on the BBC recordings and stuff like that, and I tend to play that stuff in a way, or for a lot of years I certainly did, more than these two studio albums, and it always kind of puzzled me. But I think that's it. I think that's kind of what Glenn was touching on.
That's really a good point, and I'm with you. I feel like a lot of the stuff on Substance is when they still had a foot kind of in the punk world. There's stuff that's a little more punky and guitar driven. The LPs are a lot more bass driven, and Glenn, you said tribal related to Atrocity Exhibition. I think that's a good word for it. A lot of dark kind of rhythmic stuff on the records. And I've never thought about it this way, Rod, but as you said it, I think, Substance is a record you could put on when you're cooking dinner, or you have friends over or whatever, or to play in the background at a party even. You're not going to put on Closer at a party, yeah. The LPs to me are more when you're by yourself and it's playing in the background, or you're by yourself and you're listening in headphones intently. There's no Joy Division to me is not a communal band. They are kind of an isolation individual, appropriately titled Isolation. They are I'm going to listen by myself and be in my own head and feelings kind of band. So, that's very different than an REM or even a Black Sabbath, or, a lot of bands that we talk a lot about.
Yeah, I like that. I like how the three of us kind of arrived at that together with different little pieces of stuff that we've thrown into the conversation. And real quick about Atrocity Exhibition. Yeah, the brief little notes I wrote down are basically what you guys said, and I put that I've always felt that the drums and the rhythm behind this band are really good, but rarely are the drums the featured instrument, right? Like out front, as they are on this song, which I find really interesting. So as you guys were saying, doesn't really sound like anything else on the record. Kind of doesn't sound, in a certain way, doesn't sound like anything Joy Division did at all. When you think about the drums being, first of all, that sort of like tribal rhythm, which is kind of unique to this band, and just fully the featured instrument on the opening track of the album. I find that totally interesting. And I think it really matches up with the interesting kind of dissonant, I said screeching. Screeching is not even quite the right word.
Abrasive.
Bernard Sumner's guitar. Like
yeah.
This is as I think you said, abrasive, Mike, track to open up the record with, which, as I would also agree with you, it's probably somewhere in the middle of the road for me in terms of the overall 9 songs on this record. But I really dig it, like that they, it might not even be in my top 3 favorite songs or whatever in the album, but I really like this song a lot, and I think it was pretty cool and kind of interesting, to say the least, to make it the opener.
Yeah, man. The drum thing is really interesting when you think about this band becoming New Order. That was incredibly rhythm-driven dance music. Like drums became really important to, their biggest single of all time is Blue Monday. That's got, that is all about the drum rhythm. But that's not who Joy Division was. You're exactly right.
Yeah, and we'll get into, unless there's anything you guys want to say more about the opening track. I think that's actually a pretty good segue to go into track 2, Isolation, because I think there's a couple tracks on this record, and this being one of them, that I do see like a little foreshadowing maybe towards New Order. And the obvious thing obvious thing being the keyboards on this track, that it being so keyboard driven. Not that that's not featured in other Joy Division tracks, but it plays such a big part that I don't know. I see it as a little bit of like a hint of things to come, whether it was, intentional or not. I really like this song a lot. It's always been one of my very favorites on the record. This is one of those funny ones that I came about in sort of reverse order, right around the same time that I was checking out Joy Division. As I said, that was with Substance and not yet this record. Coincidentally, I got kind of into this band, this kind of industrial band from like Tennessee or something called Dessau, which is the name of the town that the Bauhaus School of Design in Germany relocated to. It was its second home.
I knew it from something. Yeah.
Yeah, it was its second home. But they do I have a 12-inch of theirs where they do a great cover of this song. So I already loved this song before I ever heard Joy Division's version of it once. So it was very easy for, the first time I ever heard this record and subsequent times, like that interesting intro track, but then, man, track 2 just slides into something that I was already, a fan of. So Isolation has, always been one of my favorite jams on this record.
You know what's interesting about Isolation, and Glenn, I'm curious your perspective on this, is it has so this is why it's interesting to me. The chorus, when Ian Curtis says isolation, is so like dark and desperate, but it is also somehow melodic and catchy. Like it sticks in your head, but you're not going to exactly sing along to it. And I think that is kind of the power of Joy Division, is they're really good songwriters and they write really interesting melodies, but they're not, other than, Level Terrace Apart or whatever, are not really singable, but they're still stuck in your head in this really interesting way. It's such kind of outsider music, but it's done with songwriter chops. I don't know. It's just, I can't think of anybody else exactly like them in that way.
Yeah, the melody for this, the melody for me is in the synthesizer. It's in the ding 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 ding, like when at least what gets stuck in my head is,
no, that's right,
is that, and then Ian Curtis is like just sort of accents it so wonderfully with his lyrics and vocals.
You just nailed what I was trying to say, and you said it much more succinctly, and that is Joy Division's melody is almost always in the instrumentation, not in the vocal. The thing that's stuck in your head is almost always a guitar part or a bass line or a synthesizer, not his vocal melody. But when he has them, like when he says isolation, it's so, I don't know, it's so, like, it gives me chills. Like there's something.
It all sort of weaves together so perfectly. It's catchy and dark and well written and executed, all of those things all at the same time. That's like that big sort of ball of twine that is Joy Division.
Yeah,
it's so good.
Glenn, I'm curious, like as a guy who loves melody and a guy who loves lyrics, what do you think about, like, does any of that resonate with you?
Yeah, it does. However, like on this song, I felt like it, like with a title and the style that they have or can get into at points, I feel like it should have been maybe more. Like, to me, Isolation, I feel isolation as a term in the song The Eternal, because that seems very like melancholy and kind of
The Eternal is dark as shit.
Yeah, that to me is like the feeling of isolation. This is a little bit, it's just slightly too maybe melodic, I suppose, or I just felt like, God, they could have really taken that to a different level, just with the name of the song and the lyrics. But And that's what I was kind of trying to get to, is like those songs that are kind of not either really upbeat, like A Means to an End, which I really like, and or like really downtrodden and melancholy, like The Eternal, which I also really like. Those ones that kind of fit in the middle, which this is one of them, just kind of like, they're good, but to me, like, I just like the other, either one style or the other a bit more when they do that. I don't know if that makes sense, but
You know, one thing we missed, Glenn, we often do when we start talking about the songs, we didn't talk about your asterisks. How many asterisks did this record get out of its 9 tracks?
yeah, and I can't wait to see whatever little ditty you put on the YouTube screen for the asterisk.
I was just thinking about it, to be
It's a
honest
big
with you.
asterisk right at your face.
Just thinking about it.
So what is there?
9 songs.
7, 8. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 out of 9. Yeah, that's
Strong.
a lot. The first 2 actually did not get an asterisk. It starts with Passover and kind of builds. I kind of feel like the tempo of the record kind of builds up and then kind of goes down a little bit and then goes up in a different way for me. But the last end of the record, I really enjoy just the kind of the melancholy end to it all.
All right. So little surprised about the first 2, especially Isolation, the second track. But hey, you're the asterisk maker. For me, I want to briefly say about the song Colony. I've talked about this about the band before. One of the many aspects that I love about Joy Division, one of the foremost is the way that so often the bass sort of is in the forefront, and Bernard Sumner does such a good job of sort of accenting things with guitar. This particular record is some of my favorite guitar work of Bernard Sumner, of any Joy Division stuff. There's some tracks that I really, really love his work. I kind of mentioned his interesting kind of dissonant, screechy guitar on the opener. I love his guitar on this song. I think he's not just accenting as much. The guitar's featured a lot more on this record than on a lot of Joy Division stuff. I really like the way he plays said guitar on a lot of tracks. So I've got to give a specific shout out to his work on this record.
The guitaring on this record for sure is excellent, and I think Colony almost sounds like it could be on Unknown Pleasures. Like the guitar is more prominent, like that record, than on this record. But I don't want to leap Passover, the song Passover, too much, which is the song that precedes Colony, just because Glenn mentioned for him that's where the record takes off. That's the start of my favorite 3-song sequence, which is that song through the end of side 1, which is Passover, Colony, and A Means to an End. Like, though, I love this whole record, I really do, and it's one of those records. The more I've heard it over the years, the more I love it. And I was so excited that you chose it, Rod, because it made me have to listen to it every day for the past week, and I really do love it more every time I hear it. And those 3 songs in particular, if you would have showed me the song list prior to you selecting it to talk about this week, I would have probably said Means to an End, Heart and Soul, or Eternal or Decades, all songs that I love sort of off the top of my head. But listening to it repeatedly in the last few days, I'm like, no, man, Passover, Colony, and Means to an End, like that run of songs is just like fucking excellent, man.
Yeah, I had a couple. I totally agree. It was fun. I also had a couple changes of not changes of heart, but changes in the way that I perceive a couple of the songs on this record. And so I guess as a segue, I would say one of those is A Means to an End. I wrote down definitely my Halo on this, even though it's weird. It is a fairly well-known Joy Division song, but you don't hear about it as much as other Joy Division classics, right? It's not one that pops up in conversation or people cite, although it should be, because that was maybe there's one other track on this, but that I had the most fun listening to, just because I forgot how much I loved it and what a great song it was. I kind of underestimated it. Same with you, like looking at the track list ahead of time. Okay, all right, when I go to put the needle on this, what I'm my preconceived notion of the record or whatever. This is one that that sort of when we have fun doing our listenings for this, there's always something that sort of grabs you in a different way, and this was it for sure. I would also add briefly, when talking about Isolation, I mentioned like a little foreshadowing of New Order, but I really meant just kind of because of the synthesizer. This song as a whole sounds like a bridge between the two bands to me. Like,
yeah, I read a thing about Means to an End that compared it to being proto death disco, the genre death disco, which is exactly what it is. It's like that dark wave sort of gothic dance music, It's funny, the way I ended up buying this record was due to this song, but not because of the song itself. It's because A Means to an End was the name of a really cool mid-90s Joy Division compilation that included Girls Against Boys cover of She's Lost Control, which is why I bought it. And it's got Codeine on it, and Low and Moby and a bunch of kind of mid-90s alt rock rockers, and that's like A Means to an End, and I'm like, do I even know that song? And I'm like, oh, it's on fucking Closer. And so that song, because it was the name of the comp, is what got me into this album. So that song definitely holds a special place for me.
Glenn, I know you've got something to say about A Means to an End.
Yeah, it's my first double asterisk. It's my favorite. I think my favorite song on the record. I double asterisk The Eternal as well, because I in a much different reason. But yeah, this is for sure my favorite song. It's upbeat. It actually, like the bass line, or that's just kind of driving. I don't know if that's, you mentioned, what did you call it? Death disco or whatever. It reminds me a lot of like Rudimentary Peni, just kind of the driving bass. Like, listen to it again, it totally reminds me of that a lot, which I obviously love that too. But yeah, my favorite song for sure on the record.
Love it. Great way to end a side of a record too.
Yeah, for sure, absolutely. Once again, just I think at some point in my listening this week, it was at least once, if not twice, where I didn't have time at the moment to listen to even an entire side, let alone the whole record. But I put the needle on that track a couple extra times just because it was so fun to listen to.
Love it. And I think Heart and Soul as the first track for side 2. We don't do a side 2 track 1 kind of feature necessarily, but that's a really good way to start a side 2. And the Means to an End into Heart and Soul is really strong. I think the rhythm section, the super melodic bass, coupled with, again, kind of the rhythmic drums on Heart and Soul, is kind of perfect. Like, this run of the record, I think Glenn's kind of right. I mean, I love Isolation, so I don't know, this whole record's great, but that middle section of the record is all fucking excellent.
Yeah, that was actually, I don't know if Rod, you threw out your 3-song, but that was well, I actually have 2 3-song sequence, but my first one was Passover Colony and A Means to an End, and then my second would be like the last 3 songs. I really enjoyed those as well.
Right on. I would say totally agree. Heart and Soul, a great way to kick off side 2, but it got overshadowed a little bit when I just sort of went on and on about A Means to an End. The other track that made me feel the same way was 24 Hours. those two were the ones that I knew, that I obviously enjoyed those songs, but that sort of gave me the most unexpected extra level of enjoyment while listening to this album. And I would put 24 Hours sort of in the same category. Now I know that there was a somewhat famous film, right? Sort of 24 Hour Party People, right? About the Manchester scene, encompassing, things before this band and after, but certainly featuring this era a lot.
Yep.
But despite that, I still don't feel like when people talk about the discography and everything, and the whole catalog, everything of Joy Division, that I think this is another song that doesn't maybe get its just due. I mean, it does to a degree, but I don't know. Listening to it, I actually put this down as my favorite track on the album.
Wow.
It was, pretty tough. It had a couple other really tough ones to go up against. But at the end of the day, I had sort of splitting hairs, but I did actually write this down as my favorite. Man, it's got some groove in there for sure. It's sort of a nice blend of what I like about Joy Division and early New Order. Aside, I think the break in that song is interesting. It totally takes the tempo completely down. That's a pretty big tempo change between, the whole first part of that song, and then it's got a really cool sort of down tempo break, but then goes back into it. I just feel like that's one of those songs that if it were, 10 minutes long, I'd be fine with it, because I could just keep on grooving to it. 24 Hours is super good.
Yeah, I love that it hit you that much. Glenn, do you have an asterisk next to 24 Hours?
I do. Yeah, I just wrote jam. It's a jam. That's actually a really
that's a totally fair way to put it. It is.
Yeah, it's a good song. I like it a lot. Yeah.
Rod, your comment about I don't know if you said obvious songs or exactly how you framed it, but this album, this is truly an album to me. The only song on this record that I feel like is ever pulled out as like, I don't know what comps it's on or whatever, but Isolation, I think, is the only track on this record that, you think of as being part of their canon. All the other songs feel like deep tracks for some weird reasons.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. And I guess I ultimately would say that's to the credit of this album, because it does feel like an album. It doesn't feel like anything on this, with the possible exception of Isolation, that there's like a hit single on this. Despite some of the solid grooves, like we just talked about for 24 Hours, it does feel like an album.
Really, you don't feel a means to an end as kind of a
it could. I mean, if you want to go back and quote me on some of the things I said about it, then I would have to say that that could be.
To me, that's definitely the standout, I think.
Yeah, no. I agree. I'm not saying that there aren't songs on this record that stand on their own or should be pulled out. I'm saying when people generally present or think about the Joy Division catalog, I feel like Isolation is the only song on this record that's included alongside Disorder and Level Tear Us Apart and Decades and whatever, or
They've Lost Control and
Okay.
It feels, which is weird because there's so many great fucking songs on this record.
Right.
Glenn, I'm gonna hand this torch over to you, because I feel like you have a whole lot to say about The Eternal.
Yeah, I just again, Mike talked to just listening to this record or this band as being more of a, I would say, like a personal experience that if you're, like you said, it's not a record you're going to put on when you got friends over. It's the record you put on when you're laying in bed and maybe everybody's already gone to sleep and you just want to put your headphones on and just really listen to it intently. But yeah, this song specifically, I think, is just as good as any deep kind of melancholy, there's songs that The Cure, I put Cure-like on this. There's songs that are very just mellow and just easy to listen to and just kind of get in your head kind of songs. This would be definitely one of them. So yeah, this is my other double asterisk. Yeah, I just really love that kind of version, that style of song. Like I said, by and large, I'm an upbeat guy, but when I do want to get into that kind of just mellow, sad, Pink Floyd-ish kind of mellow, whatever style, this Into Decades, I think, is a really good way to kind of end the record. And yeah, I really liked it a lot.
Eternal is my favorite song on the record. And I am shocked that you like it that much, Glenn, and it makes me so happy. And then as soon as you said Pink Floyd, I'm like, of course. Like, Pink Floyd is kind of like your secret weapon, or like you know how in cop movies, the cop always has a side piece in like his ankle holster, so when you think you've got the guy against the wall because you have his gun, he still has the side piece. Yeah, I feel like you always have Pink Floyd in your ankle holster that you'll pull out whenever you need it.
It's a good one.
Yeah, way to throw a little film in there, Mike. I love it.
Yeah, Eternal.
Yeah,
great
good stuff.
I also love this song. It's such a well-crafted, very dark, but well-written song. I mentioned at the start of the show, the background for the record. I mentioned how this came out about 2 months after the end of Ian Curtis's life. Mike, you made a brief comment earlier on about, sort of knowing. By the time you had heard this album, you were already knew. Well, by the time anyone heard this album, they were already aware of Ian Curtis's fate. For me, this wonderful song, it's a little bit hard for me to listen to because it feels to me like you're reading a book and you get to a chapter that you're reading, but you already know the end of the story. And you know what I mean? And it's because it's inevitable. I mean, that's just a fact. I can't disassociate when I listen to this song. I can't disassociate knowing how it all panned out. So,
but
it makes it great. It makes it that much better. It's when I say that it's a little bit hard for me to listen to it, it doesn't mean that I take the needle off the record or that or that I skip this song. It actually enhances the dark beauty of this song. It's just like, it just adds so much weight to it.
Yeah, you just said what I wanted to make sure you were saying, and that is that taking it back to the movie thing, I love watching movies 5, 10, 20 times, knowing the end, because it's about the experience of the emotion getting to the end. And this song is like that to me. It's like, look, you don't want to say it's better because Ian Curtis killed himself. That's awful. But it does give the song. It's like watching Nirvana Unplugged. Like that performance has a weight and an importance because of what happened to Kurt, like the Eternal has for Ian Curtis,
Yeah. And the way I'd love to know when they made the final decision about the tracking, because I think that is much more true because it's the penultimate song on the record, I wonder if this record had already been tracked, if they made a change in decision about, I don't know. We don't know anything about that. That's all speculation. But I think it's really enhanced by the fact that it's right near the end of the record too.
Yeah. No, I agree. Pitchfork gave both Unknown Pleasures and Closer perfect 10 ratings. And of the Eternal, in their review of this record, it said it is the bleakest thing that the band ever recorded. And when you're talking about Joy Division, that's pretty bleak.
It's pretty bleak. Yeah. And it kind of ties back in too with the I was reading a little bit. You brought up the cover of the record and how perfectly it
So good.
fits this album. I believe, I forget the name of the family, but it's a photograph of a tomb, a family tomb in Italy of an Italian family. And it just fits it so perfectly. And I think that was unintentional, because I did read one quote about when the album was about to come out. There was some discussion of like, hey, should we change the cover of the record? I mean, this is considering
The
what
fucking
happened
tomb
to Ian, like we have Tomb, and fortunately it wasn't changed, because it befits the record so well. I mean, talk about an iconic record cover, right? I mean, we talked about the sort of like interesting, super simplicity and deliberately scaled down size of the image on Unknown Pleasures, right? We spent some time talking about that. And this is every bit as iconic, but maybe not every bit, but very iconic, but for a totally different reason.
Yeah. Very well said. Very well said.
Anything on the closer? I know I don't have too much to say, so I'll let you guys take it over. Decade's a perfectly fine song to close it, but I feel like after the Eternal puts you sort of through the ringer, it's one of those tracks that's pretty tough to follow up. I think Decades, fortunately, it doesn't shift gears too much or anything. It's sort of I just sort of feel the same way. I feel like it's sort of an outro to the way the Eternal made me feel, and it's a nice way to wrap up the record. But I would, you guys may have something entirely different to say.
I sort of feel like, not that they're the same song, but that they're sister songs. Like those two songs go together. Each song is over 6 minutes long, so you get 12 minutes of pretty bleak darkness there to end the record. But it feels, going back to the warm bath metaphor, it feels like a warm bath to me, and I love that. I love how it ends, and as much as I love the Eternal, I'm never disappointed to hear Decades. It feels like the coda kind of, and I like it a lot.
Yeah, same. I'm so glad they kept those next to each other. With those being like such down tempo, they easily could have put one to, let's say wrap up side one and the other to wrap up side two, something like that. I think that it was really well tracked that they matched those up to wrap up closer. How about you, Glenn?
Yeah, I'd agree. I think it goes from bleak to a little less bleak in Decades, and maybe like even some hope, I think, sprinkled in there, which is, I don't think you'd necessarily want to end it fully on a downer. So maybe kind of coming up a little bit, just slightly. But I agree. I think they're perfectly suited together. But I just think the end of the record's really really amazing.
Hope springs eternal.
Hope springs eternal. That could actually be the name for a Joy Division. That sounds like a Joy Division song. Do you guys, not sonically necessarily, but do you see, man, this is, as I say, it's kind of dumb because I think it's probably kind of obvious, but do you see Nine Inch Nails as being a kind of, there being a through line from Joy Division to Nine Inch Nails, kind of lyrically certainly, and kind of emotionally, and kind of the fan bases, like they feel kind of two sides of the same coin, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I think there's a lot of bands you could say. I mean, it's pretty obvious, how many people, how many bands, were influenced by Joy Division. But I think that's certainly a pretty poignant example of one.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else on Closer or Joy Division or your experience with these two records together? Actually, that I wasn't even thinking of this until I made that statement. But Mike, you were saying earlier, comparing the two studio LPs. obviously this isn't a vinyl cage match. It can't be because there's no ringside bell. But and so we're not going to go into it like that. But I do think the fact that we did these, or I hosted these back to back, and that it's the only 2 studio albums, I couldn't help but compare them like that as I listened to it. It's interesting. After listening to side 1, I think I probably would have gone with Closer. And after side 2, not that side 2 isn't great, but I don't know, somehow that swung the pendulum back to Unknown Pleasures for me.
Yeah.
Although after this discussion and knowing how much effect the song The Eternal had on both of you, and Glenn in particular, that definitely swings the pendulum back a little bit, right? Like, when you actually discuss it instead of just thinking about it on your own. So I don't know. I after this conversation, I would say that it makes them a little more neck and neck. Glenn, just off the top of your head, you got your 2 cents on that?
I haven't, I kind of listened to that record for that episode and this for that. I actually would love to, I probably will actually listen to both as I'm kind of heading to bed tonight, and just have that as something to ponder on, is, which one I'd say by and large, I feel like this record probably is a little bit, I'm leaning, like Mike said earlier, kind of like this one might be the better record. But I'll have to go back. I definitely have to go back and check it out.
Yeah, not to put anything in, words in your mouth, but it almost seems like it's a little more up your alley. And especially once again after hearing you talk about the Eternal specifically. So
you know what I would say, for me, I think the highs on Unknown Pleasure are higher. That to use the album covers as the metaphor, I think the peaks on Unknown Pleasures I probably like better, but for me, Closer is more consistent all the way through. So I think I would take Closer as like a complete album.
Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Again, the finest of hairs to split for sure.
Yeah.
But all right. Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll let Mike sort of lead us into next week, as he does so well, and kind of wrap up this with discussing a track choice and all that. But thanks for tuning in, everybody. I hope you liked our albeit brief Joy Division series of a whole 2 albums, but that's because their fantastic career as a band was all too brief as well for unforeseen circumstances and reasons. But hope you enjoyed tuning in, and hopefully you'll enjoy continuing to listen to these 2 records with perhaps with a little different insight and a little different way after I know I will, after having the fun of discussing them. So thanks a lot for tuning in.
Rod, it was a really fun 2-album series, and I know we generally have kind of an unspoken rule that we don't do compilations or live records or in studio records on the show. But I'm kind of bummed we're out of Joy Division records, so maybe we need to break that rule at some point in the future to talk about Substance or the BBC sessions or whatever.
Yeah, well, something tells me that leading up to that show that supposedly is now going to feature Substance being played in its entirety, I think that could potentially be a perfect opportunity to slide that one in there.
The door is open, but that will not be next week, because next week it is Glenn's turn. And Glenn, you want to let us know what we're going to be talking about for episode 273?
Yeah, so I was just, I like some of the theming that we do. We throw in some different ideas. Always love the standard, like, let's just pick a record and see how it holds up today. But I'm going to throw something out that, maybe it's gimmicky, maybe it's whatever, it is what it is. But I would like us to talk about 5 songs from perceived one-hit wonder bands and what those 5 one-hit wonder songs would be. Our top 5.
Top 5 one-hit wonders.
Right. So of any genre, of any and it's, you know, again, we don't have to argue over, oh no, that band had another song that was
definitely gonna argue that.
What's that?
I'm definitely gonna argue that.
Right, I know you will. Yeah, I thought
not just the Romantics.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, I just thought we'd do something fun and do that. And yeah, I had some ideas already popping into my head that I'd love to share, and we'll see if they pass the test with you guys. But yeah, so five songs. We don't have to spend 2 hours talking about it. We'll just roll through it pretty quick. And I was thinking about maybe 3, but I think 5 would be better.
Oh, I was already thinking that narrowing it down to 5 seems like a near impossibility. So. Yeah, five. It's got to be at least 5, and we haven't done a list in a while either. So good suggestion, bud.
I have an Apple Music playlist that is 100 of my favorite one-hit wonders, and I had to cut songs from that. So
wow,
I have a lot to say about this topic, and that will be really fun. So don't act like it's going to be a short episode. There will be a lot to say on said one-hit wonder episode. I love that theme. Right. Good one, Ben. But in the meantime, check out huntsmanhill.com for past episodes. Please reach out to us with comments and suggestions to huntsmanhillpodcast@gmail.com. You can find us on Instagram and Twitter. Please check out our music. A new record by Man Huntsman is out on Friday. Academy OC, Omertà 68, Mid-City 3. Beergasm, we're still waiting for that debut record. But lots of fun to check out there. And then, of course, you have to check out the HHPP Spotify playlist that is just brimming with great material, and now includes what, Rodney, from Joy Division's Closer?
Well, our fantastic playlist that you have compiled, Mike, is now into how many? Are we into the hundreds of songs now?
We are at, I will tell you here, we are at 200. After today, it will be 277 songs and 25 hours and 26 minutes of music.
All right. So considering that, as much as we discussed the Eternal, with all those songs, I don't think anyone needs a 6-minute plus song on there, especially one that I think should probably be better listened to by one's self, maybe on a pair of headphones, something like that. Earlier, Glenn suggested that A Means to an End to him seemed like the song that would be sort of easiest on the ears from this album to put on a compilation or something. And I also said that I didn't think that song got enough due attention. So on our compilation, we will have A Means to an End, the great track that closes out side 2 on Closer.
Side
1, sorry, the last song on side 1.
That really feels like a good pick. Let me just give you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let me give you the last 6 songs currently on the Spotify playlist. Kerosene by Big Black, Skip Steps 1 and 3 by Superchunk, Selena by Screeching Weasel, Buried Alive by Black Sabbath, Radio Free Europe by REM, and A Means to an End by Joy Division. So lots of good shit happening on this playlist, people.
Absolutely. If you can't find something amongst those 270 songs that you really dig, I don't know what to tell you.
Right, that was awesome, Rodney. Good pick and a really, really fun conversation.
Yeah, thanks, guys. And thanks for joining us, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Nice. Glad we didn't have to say RIP to anybody this week.
Yeah.
Yeah, no shit.
All right. See you guys.